Friendship don't mean shit. And this is a viewpoint of which I've held for a pretty much in my entire life. To put it in the bluntest way of possible, I have never really had too many friends. Most friends I ever had were only friends with me because I was pretty rich. But not to brag or anything. You see, I work as a sea captain on a boat which I named the Golden Dodo after my idol, Colonel Dodo. More false idol. One time I met Colonel Dodo down near the bar of Hepbom, and he was very rude to me. He didn't even look at me in the eyes and gave me secret instructions to the waiter and waitresses to throw tennis balls at me. That bastard! Despite Dodo clearly hating my guts and even sending hitmen after me in an attempt to get the change of the name on the boat, I still continue to call it the Golden Dodo. The boat isn't even golden, it's just brown like dog shit. Now, I don't use my boat for sailing or anything like that. No, instead I actually hold a social club of all sorts at the very top of the boat, inside the captain's quarters. I intended for my social club to be a social club and end all social clubs, but sadly this wasn't just the case at all. This was mainly due to the fact that I got charged an incredibly generous 60 grand entry fee for anyone who wanted a membership. And of course, that was just a fact. In that reality, my boat didn't even had belong to me. In reality, my boat belonged to a local mobster named Joseph Stalin, looking like a Massimo Torrini. In 2005, Massimo Torrini was running a vehicle rental shop on the coast. I was a very stupid man back then, so I decided that this was my only chance of ever getting my own boat. Massimo even tried offering me a helicopter and Rolls Royce, but I wasn't interested in that. I wanted a boat and told Massimo about my love for Colonel Dodo and my love for sitting on the dock of the bay and watching the tide fade away. That's when Massimo told me that he had just the thing. Oh, that Massimo Tortini had a tight-faced hand and at the pebble that he was going to come at me with that rubber dingy built for two. But I saw this through his rose and demanded that he either give me the boat for a worthy of sitting in, or else I would simply take my business elsewhere. You certainly are hard to bargainer, you know that? Tortini asked as he went to the very back room of the vehicle rental shop. Not even 2 seconds had gone by, Tortini then came out crashing through the walls of the shop riding on a boat. These days, my boat viewed as a second rate of compared to the other boats. However, back in 2005, this boat was considered the shit. If such items could be used as they think they can be, that's when I realized that I had a problem. I was a very skint due to the fact of owing money to a lot of powerful Russian gangsters in the area. But Massimo, God bless him, and didn't let a little thing like that get in the way. So Massimo decided that he would become a regular visit to my boat. And this became a big problem, as he would often aim his shotgun at the guests on my boat in an attempt to tax them for their sweet car insurance. The other bastard, not even like there's any other attendants in the club anyway. In fact, the only people attending the social club were my old whaling buddies, Captain Birdseye and Captain Crunch. Captain Crunch was currently not held in a very high regard after his foolish antics down at the court center led to the peanut butter crunch recipe being stolen by a bunch of cynical birds. This led to Quaker Oats ordering a hint on Captain Crunch, but he was able to cover his tracks by bribing the senior FBI agent, Dave Norton, into tricked Quaker Oats into thinking that Captain Crunch had died in a cereal deal gone horribly wrong. Problems arose, however, when the Soggies even learned that Crunch was making movies in Croydon. So Crunch was once again needing to cover his tracks to the Crunch Mobile, and his way down to the point, unable to buy a boat out of fear of attention that it would bring, Captain Crunch opted instead to join my social club. Meanwhile, Captain Birdseye, who runs a private gun shop over in Kingston, Empire Bay, opted to join my social club after he poked his eye out in a tree branch. One chilly afternoon at Empire Bay, Birdseye was walking home from his favorite bar when he ended up walking face first into an old oak tree. The tree branch went straight through his Birdseye's left eye. Oddly, Birdseye didn't seem to be bothered all about the loss of his eye. Then he proceeded to spend the next 2 hours telling the oak all of how his bird's eye view fish fingers were now 5 pounds. That's corporate generosity right there, that is. That is when Captain Birdseye claimed that something happened anyway. As according to the formats, Birdseye was seen last week doing a crossword puzzle when he had both of his eyes intact. So I do smell a bit of bullshit, if you mind me saying. Now, as you see, the problem of being a boatful of men is that you think about men. You know what I mean? Now, my social club is all about friendship, and we do a lot of loads of smelly activities, which are intended to help me make my town a safer place. Our activities including sticking pictures of fish into people's apartments, stealing trampolines from local supermarkets, and whaling. Don't ya? Over my time myself, Captain Crunch and Birdseye got me some really good friends. However, I just still wasn't satisfied enough when having 2 people in my social club. So instead of paying Massimo back his money, I decided to buy a series of luxury items to order to keep it increase and appeal to my club masses. I bought an old rusty microphone, Christmas lights that were also so freaking bright that they'll make you blind, and like a brand new door, which is painted in black. I don't want any colors at all, just painted black. I also got myself a new Rolling Stone, which sits on top of the door. And the way that it works is that if anyone tries to enter the social club unannounced, the Rolling Stone will roll on top of them, effectively making them a squash pancake in fact. I was so worried about the people potentially robbing me that if I went as far as to hire my very own security guards in the form of Squidward tentacles. Sadly, this didn't last very long, as one day some bastard or teenage hoods decided to yell into the microphone, which caused Squidward, who was literally listening on the other end, to have his eardrums literally burst out of his head. I was then forced to, under threat of death, to pay Squidward's medical bills, much to my chagrin. Once Massimo Tony caught on wind about buying expensive shit, he went ape and demanded that I pay him the tribute. The night after Squidward's visit at the hospital, I received a call from Massimo, who was not very happy Easter egg. In that moment, Massimo lost all care and control and gave in to vent to his anger. Such disrespect! I am not asking for much money from you, boy. Just enough to wet my beak. What are you, a parrot? I joked about, but Massimo didn't find that funny whatsoever. Massimo demanded that I pay him over for £60,000 by the end of the week. I informed Massimo that I was kind of skint at the moment. The phone line went silent for a brief moment, until I heard Massimo said, perhaps instead of that, maybe son Stavlor could join your club for a day. Isn't that cool with you? Yeah, of course, Massimo. What's the... I was rudely cut off as Massimo had already hung up the phone. He was quite a bastard, that Massimo Troni, you know. Don't you judge him for the buddy, and his mother used to make him trim his mustache with a cat scale. A cat scale? Who the hell does that? So, following that morning and dawn, myself and Captain Birdseye View were working on some project on the social club for the arrival of Tortini and his son, Stavlor. Even though it was the middle of August, we decided to put up some extra Christmas decorations because Massimo reminded me of Santa Claus and his mustache of his. Little did I know how much Massimo Torni hated that damn mustache. He hated it because of high school people used to run up to him and squeeze that damn mustache. They used to love squeezing it, like a Turkish garden hose. After getting everything set up for Tortorni and his son's arrival, I went out of the bow of my boat and began smoking a cigarette when I spotted something on the horizon. It looked to be a small rowing boat. I pulled out a pair of binoculars from my ear and looked through them using the binoculars. I was able to see Stalo Tonori with some sailor rowing towards us. "Hey, sailor ahoy!" Sal proclaimed, while waving his hand. "Oh, frick! Captain Crunch turned the boat around!" I commanded at the top of my lungs. Captain Crunch then tried his damn best to steer the boat into the other direction. But it was no use, as Stavlor and the sailor had already managed to climb on board. "Hello there," Sal proclaimed very happily. I was nearly sick and tried to hold it in. I ended up vomiting all over the bloody bow, and that's when Sal's sailor buddy introduced himself as being a cruise ship captain named Kevin Cruz. Well, the birth name was something, like Spiffy Biffy, but Kevin changed his name once he started performing stand-up comedy shows on cruise ships. He, along with all the South Canadian border. Well, that was more north to be exact. But whatever such exact details aren't entirely necessary, now are they, my friend? I then proceed to give Stavlor the tour of the social club. Inside the club, we have polar bear skin rug because who cares about polar bears? One of those fools ate my laundry mat dealer's foot clean off. We also had an old 1930s record player, 2 pieces of 8, and a pack of Lampscar gum, which now stuck to the disco ball, which we would had hanging from the ceiling. There was also a rotten stench coming from the fridge, in which they kept the main street area of the club with the toilet. Sometimes the shrimp goes off at night, so we had a toilet installed into the living room for when times get heated. "So what's the plan for tonight then, some boy?" Kevin inquired, rather angry tone, which seemed very cut and out of place for someone his portfolio. But I decided to ignore it. "Well, it's Tuesday night, and we usually go out whaling on Tuesdays," Captain Birdseye said, smoking from a pipe. "Really? Well, what kind of hopping we hope to catch or watch a DVD, or marking macaroni art, sing campfire songs, or maybe even—" "Stop!" I yelled at the very top of my lungs, as my bloody heart just couldn't take all these cringy suggestions that Sal was making. Also, I should probably mention that Sal was going to be only in his 30s to find mid-20s and kept wheezing and coughing. Probably ate too many pork rinds. And we all have been there at least once in our lives. Now, I know certainly, but the question is, have you? Curious, I then decided to ask Sal what DVD he would be planning on watching. "Well, my father got me this Friends DVD from his friend over at Atlantic Quays," Sal explained. Then he reached inside his hat and then removed a very skinny-looking DVD case. He then handed the DVD over to me. Oh man, the DVD! It looked so bloody terrible. It had a poorly drawn picture of some sort of pineapples brutally being murdered by an apple in the middle of the park. What on earth does this have to do with Friends? Meanwhile, at the back of the DVD, it showcased a picture of Captain Crunch doing the can-can. The can-can dance is a very neat move, which involves you sticking your inside of a trash can and sticking out your feet at the bottom of the trash can. Once you have done that, you need to answer 7 riddles while dancing to a really horrid 1960s jazz song, which many of you may not know that it's been made in an underground studio apartment in the summer of 2004 by a fat, sweaty fish who used to go by the name of Real Steven Spielberg on Reddit a couple years ago. This was, of course, until the real Steven Spielberg threatened to throw his shoes at the fish. Shoe for you. Anyways, I am actually a big fan of Friends. If you haven't seen the show before, then I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but you can honestly just screw off right now. Don't come back and read this story until you've watched 10 seconds and 10 seasons and 236 episodes. Also, make sure to watch the Madagascar trilogy, which stars David Squeezmer as Melman the giraffe, an essential viewing for anyone worthy enough to earn their salt and pepper, maybe even their paprika. We even decided to watch the DVD at the Vow at the Ship. I had a bird's eye and Captain Crunch prepare some seats, what we all recently stolen from the local cinema. Meanwhile, Kevin Cruz was in charge of setting up the DVD player with Stavlor. At that moment, another ship pulled alongside us, and who should be driving the ship was none other than Captain Ahab himself. Ahab then pulled out a megaphone and asked, "Have you seen him?" "Who?" Sal asked, dumbfounded that he was busy putting up some more Christmas lights for strange reason. "The monster, Moby Duck. Listen here, and listen well. Here's a warning I'll have to say about a monster of the sea who goes by the name of Moby," Ahab warned. "Moby what?" Captain Birdseye joked as he began laughing hysterically. "Keep laughing, asshole. Just keep laughing. Well, if you see that bastard of a whale, I'll be the one laughing. Oh yes, I'll be laughing all the way to the bank." And with that, Captain Ahab and his boat and Perkoy disappeared from the sight. Following Ahab's departure, I demanded that Kevin Crunch hurry the hell up with sending that damn DVD. "Patience, friend," Kevin proclaimed, was a little too happy for my taste. I then got sick again as Kevin Cruz finally popped the DVD into the damn player. We then proceeded to sit ourselves down and help ourselves to some old popcorn boxes. The popcorn came up from an old rundown warehouse on Mohawk Avenue, which had been abandoned since 1925, I believe. I'm sure the popcorn is pretty safe though. I will say, even though Sal and Birdseye were coughing out their lungs after just taking one bite of the little poppers. Whatever, I'm sure they'll be fine. After all, I did say it wasn't onion paste, but didn't I, buddy? Yes, I certainly did. The DVD started, but nothing happened. The DVD player was on, but there was no picture on the projector. I threw a shoe at the DVD player, which caused the bloody thing to start shooting out Gurnicho Burra olive oil as the DVD started showing the main theme song to Friends. Well, it was more than a sick, twisted parody of the intro. In one scene, Monica was shown removing her head, then bouncing it around like a beach ball. Joey was shown making out with a salmon, who was, believe it or not, an acclaimed TV actor during the 1970s. Chandler was then shown dancing with Chandler, which had a human face on for some reason. Rachel was shown stuffing 3-leaf clovers in her hair. Finally, Ross was shown down on the screen with a very sinister expression. Also, Phoebe's hair was 1% blonder than normal, which made me vomit aggressively. I mean, how could it? Why not? Something meaning 1% more mean that something would sure enough make anyone vomit out their own lunch. Also, during the part where the group sit in the fountain, the water fountain was actually lava, and it ended up pouring out and killing the friends in the process, save for Joey, who was chatting with an ostrich for some bizarre reason. The episode then began with Ross sitting in his apartment drinking a beer. However, Ross didn't look very happy. In fact, he looked very smelly. This was certainly not the Ross that I knew. I was so scared by Ross's blank expression that I tried to make a run for it, but was held down by Sal, who then looked at me with a very smelly face and he asked, "What's your hurry, Murray?" "Hey, come on, kid, it can't be that bad," Captain Birdseye joked, although I could tell deep down that he was just afraid as I was. At that moment, Joey and Chandler came into the apartment, but Ross didn't even seem to notice them. And even if he did, he would certainly no effort to even acknowledge their presence. Chandler was the first one to break the uncomfortable silence when he asked, "So Ross, you still up for what we talked about yesterday?" "What are you talking about?" Ross asked in a very gruff, nasally voice, which sounded nothing like Ross at all, while Chandler went on to explain 2 days prior that Ross has agreed to accompany him and Joey on a fishing trip. Ross didn't seem to recall ever agreeing to go on that. He then asked, rather in an angry voice of tone, I, Ross Giller, would agree like a thing like that? Well, you did so. Joey was cut off as Ross grabbed him by the neck and then pinned him to the wall. You and Chandler get the hell out of here, Joey! Ross then yelled in an almost angry voice I've ever heard. Fearing for their lives, Joey and Chandler then ran out of the apartment, screaming like madman. It's also worth nothing that Ross's eyebrows were thicker and slick than a bloody big you could possibly land a jumbo jet on them. The next scene then transitions to show Chandler and Joey running into Central Perk, where they ran into Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe. Now, something I found weird about this whole scene was that Phoebe was shown playing Shrek 2 on Xbox. Now, could that be anything other than blended DreamWorks propaganda? What did DreamWorks sponsor for this episode or something? Joey and Chandler then proceed to each take turns telling each other stories to the girls, and they were very shocked of what the pair were telling them. Well, doesn't that sound like anything like Ross at all? Monica remarked as she clutched her cup of coffee tightly. I have an idea, Rachel said. Then she continued with, me and Monica will follow Ross around the city tomorrow and see if there's something, or perhaps even someone that's bothering him. It's just not like Ross to lose his head like that. Well, you're certainly right there, Joey remarked. It is also quickly worth nothing there, so there was no laugh track. And there was also no other patrons in the cafe apart from the friends, of course. Anyways, Rachel and Monica were then shown sitting inside of Rachel's car, waiting in the vein for Ross to finally leave his apartment. The next scene, Rachel and Monica follow Ross around New York City, but they couldn't find the life for them. They found anything too out of the ordinary. Ross had a coffee at Central Park and then caught to Subway with Brooklyn, where he attended a yoga class with Peter's Klizma. What could Ross be doing with hanging out with Coraline Capo? Rachel asked. According to Monica, Ross had begun to spending a great time with Klizma on his yoga class, in order to help improve his personality, as well as possibly give him a gangster psyche. Seeking him for more information, the pair followed Ross and had an surely late-night supper at Patsy's, his favorite Italian restaurant. Reporting back to the others in the morning, Rachel explained that she and Monica had found nothing out of the ordinary about Ross. In fact, Monica went on to explain that the only thing worth mentioning was that Ross now had a suddenly satisfaction with cheese. At one point, Ross paid a visit to Cheese Farm in Staten Island. The smell of Cheese Farm was apparently so bad, it caused Rachel's face to turn green like Shrek. And for my eyes to water, I was proud investor of smell-o-vision, you see? This meant that I could smell the smelly cheese right through the projector. I vomited so much that the vomit filled the entire boat. We could have drowned, but Captain Crunch managed to push my sick into the cold, crystal blue ocean below deck. Terrifying, isn't it? Captain Crunch then asked theoretically, with it pulling the smuggest voice that you had ever seen. Satisfied with Rachel and Monica's rather lackluster information regarding Ross, Joey then opted to invite Ross around for a party at his apartment. And the party then was intended to celebrate Joey's purchase of a brand new toaster, which was shaped like Squidward's head. Oh, Squiddy, that's just what Joey has done to you. I'll have his head for this. To make a short party ended, going terribly. Ross was very rude, and he insulted pretty much everyone who even dared to look at him funny. He even insulted the local parkland, who was just there with Jody's guest of honor. Joey was horrified when Phoebe informed him about Ross pissing him off at the local parkland. Oh man, your ears look like a frickin' garden hose, Ross mocked. The parkland was just very self-conscious about his floppy ears, and this was a real reason why he never married, despite the approaching age of 55. The local parkland then announced that his deal with Joey was officially canceled. You see, the reason why Joey had invited to the park over to his apartment was because of park land. He was looking for a star for a sitcom he was planning creating called Young at Fart. The show would have been an aspiring actor who was forced to step his parents and join a cheesecake factory where he meets groups of high school dropouts. They all team up and then become the best actors in town, with the help from a special guest, stars Solomon Richard. And there would be lots of training more montages. The main character was exactly like Joey. He wouldn't even need to act. Angered over Ross costing him his deal with Pike Land and his chance to make it big, Joey forcibly evicted Ross and the entire of the rest of the party from his apartment. After everyone left the apartment, Joey then decided that he would put the matters into his own hands, and he started to follow Ross back to his own apartment. Upon reaching the apartment, he said, Ross had turned around to face Joey and asked, "You think you don't know you're following me?" "Dude, what's up with ya?" Joey asked, before continuing with, "You just don't seem like yourself, that's all." "Oh, I'm fine, Joey. In fact, I'm better than fine. Since you're here, buddy, would you like to spend the night?" Ross asked, and Joey agreed happily, before heading to bed. Ross gave Joey strict warnings not to go inside the fridge, and if that Joey needed a snack, there was food around the place. After getting tucked into bed in the sleeping bag, Joey's curiosity eventually became far too much for him to handle, and so at all fours he crept around the kitchen. I mean, what would Ross possibly be hiding in that fridge that was so important? Joey needed to find out what Ross was hiding, and fast. Perhaps it could be the answer for the sudden change in Ross's moods as of late. Once inside the kitchen, Joey made his way over to the fridge and opened it. He couldn't believe what he saw, and neither could I. Inside the fridge lay an unmistakable dead body of Ross Gillar. He had been dead for a while, and it would seem as if his skin turned green and rotten. His eyes were bulging out like some kind of Luca Barsi. Well, if that's Ross, then who's... Joey's words were cut off when he heard someone knocking on the front door. Joey reluctantly answered the door and was delighted that he saw Phoebe here to greet them. Phoebe was holding a red velvet cake, and she explained that she wanted to give it to him and Ross in order to make up for the bad week he was having. Joey clutched into Phoebe tightly as he began sobbing heavily. "Joey, what's the matter? What's the story? What's the word, hummingbird?" Phoebe inquired curiously. I chuckled a bit at Phoebe's little song, but this caused Joey to glare at the screen. It lasted only for a brief moment, but it managed to make me feel incredibly uneasy. "Phoebe, you've got to see this," Joey cried at the top of his lungs. Then he proceeded to show Phoebe the inside of the fridge. Phoebe nearly gasped when she saw the bloody, dead body of Ross. "But if that's Ross, then who's..." Phoebe was cut off as Joey said, "Look, I didn't even know, but something's not quite right here. I mean, did Ross' father own a bike? What the hell does that even have to do with anything?" Phoebe asked. At that moment, a tall figure came out from the shadows behind Joey and Phoebe and asked in a cold, dark voice, "Do you think this is a problem?" Joey then turned around only to be greeted with a sledgehammer into his face, killing him instantly. Phoebe reacted instantly by throwing the red velvet cake she was holding at Ross's face. This only served to make him even more angry. He then ended up strangling Phoebe with his bare hands, and Phoebe still looked terrified as Ross's teeth became sharp like knives. Then he joked, "Is there a draft in there? Still got a sense of humor, Ross, I see." And with that, Ross ate Phoebe in one bite and said, "Now to deal with those fools, Monica, Rachel, and Chandler." Baffled by Joey and Phoebe's sudden disappearance, Rachel and Monica were dead set on heading straight to the NYDP, but Chandler had other ideas. He suggested not asking Ross about it, and fighting reluctantly, Rachel eventually agreed to go with the pair, leaving Ross's apartment. Ross appeared to have returned to normal when he was hosting a small barbecue, inside the apartment's living room for some bizarre reason. A barbecue? And you didn't even think to invite us? Monica joked about it, but Ross didn't laugh. Then again, her joke was pretty terrible, and Monica should know better than making such a terrible bloody jokes. So Rachel did a little walk around Ross's apartment before eventually deciding to grab a beer from the fridge. That's when she saw Ross's dead body sitting there, and that's when Rachel felt a handgun touch the back of her head. Turning around, Rachel came face to face, least to someone who looked exactly like Ross. "Who the hell are you? What the hell have you done to Ross?" Rachel asked. "Ain't it obvious, Rachel?" the Ross impostor asked, theoretically. Then he continued with, "The real Ross was killed by me a long time ago, so I could take his place and lure you all into a trap." "Why would you do that?" Rachel asked, as the Ross impostor responded, "Because, Rach, to be frank, I'm sick and tired of seeing you pesky fools running around New York like you're the best of friends. And we don't need that shit." At that moment, Chandler and Monica came in, with Chandler eating a carrot cake. I think, though, to be honest with you, it looked more like human food, or perhaps maybe some Burger King foot lettuce. Now, that's the last thing I would want on my Burger King burger, I tell ya.